Super, écoutez, merci nous avoir choisis. Je sais qu'il y a d'autres conférences qui se passent en même temps, mais on va essayer de vous livrer quelque chose de sympathique aujourd'hui. Donc, je me présente, mon nom est Omar Lafif et je suis consultant et analyste dans le département des données et d'intelligence artificielle chez ITI. Et il me fera plaisir de vous présenter la première partie de la présentation aujourd'hui qui se déroulera en français. Et ensuite, j'ai avec moi mon collègue Daniel, notre consultant principal en intelligence d'affaires chez ITI et qui prendra le soin de vous présenter la deuxième partie qui se déroulera en anglais. D'accord? Ça marche pour vous? Parfait. Mais juste avant de commencer, je vais essayer de commencer par une petite introduction, juste pour qu'on soit tous sur la même page. Vous savez, on parle beaucoup de données. On vit dans un monde inondé de données. On en trouve partout. Et aujourd'hui, on est là pour essayer de... Si on est tous ici, c'est parce que toutes les entreprises se posent la même question. Parce qu'on en entre dans une nouvelle ère de l'intelligence artificielle. Et les questions qu'on se pose, c'est comment on peut bien se préparer pour s'assurer qu'on adopte bien cette technologie révolutionnaire afin d'augmenter notre niveau de productivité, essayer de stimuler l'innovation en général. Donc aujourd'hui, on va essayer de répondre à cette question-là et bien plus. D'accord? Alors, comme table de matière, comme agenda aujourd'hui, moi je vais m'occuper des deux premiers points. Donc je vais vous présenter nos piliers. On va commencer par nos piliers technologiques chez ITI et on va expliquer comment ça représente notre force ensemble. Et ensuite, on va parler de comment on s'y prend pour aider nos clients à évoluer. Et après, je céderai la parole à Daniel qui va vous emmener vers le sujet de l'intelligence artificielle générative. Qu'est-ce que c'est? Comment ça peut nous affecter en tant qu'entreprise et comment on peut adopter cet outil-là dès aujourd'hui. Mais vous allez voir qu'avant ça, c'est toute une question de préparation. C'est toute une question de s'assurer que nos données sont bien organisées, bien structurées, facilement accessibles. Et on va discuter de ça aujourd'hui. Et à la fin, Daniel il va vous présenter nos tout nouveaux services d'accès à l'intelligence, accès aux données dans l'ère de l'intelligence artificielle. OK. Donc, tout d'abord, nos 5 piliers technologiques. Donc, comme vous le savez déjà, je suppose, donc, ITI repose sur 5 piliers technologiques. Ensemble, ces piliers-là forment une structure solide pour répondre à tous les besoins technologiques de nos clients. Donc, ce que ça fait, c'est que nous ne sommes pas seulement un fournisseur de services, mais nous sommes votre partenaire technologique complet, capable de répondre à tous les besoins, que ce soit réseautique, infrastructure, modern workplace, transformation infonuagique. Mais aujourd'hui, nous allons porter une attention particulière à notre département de données et intelligence artificielle. On va vous expliquer pourquoi on pense que nous occupons une position unique pour vous aider. Et j'ai 2 points pour supporter mon affirmation. Alors, le premier, c'est que nous sommes uniques en raison, c'est un peu lié au point que je viens de mentionner, on est unique en raison d'ensembles complets de services qui sont complémentaires. Donc, on est capable de répondre à tous les aspects d'un déploiement. Donc, que ce soit infrastructure, réseau, licence, sécurité, conformité. Et par exemple, on voit tout le temps avec nos projets que l'implication de plusieurs piliers dans un seul projet pour s'assurer qu'on livre une solution clé en main, pour s'assurer que nos clients ils vont avoir une solution prête à être utilisée. Et le deuxième point que j'aimerais amener ici, qui est très important, c'est que récemment, c'est en raison de notre spécialisation Analytics en Microsoft Azure. Donc récemment, nous avons reçu cette spécialisation après avoir passé de longues séances rigoureuses d'audit avec Microsoft, et pour venir valider notre approche de travail, notre méthodologie, notamment sur la préparation, la planification des projets, le déploiement, la documentation et aussi la livraison. Et donc, de ce point, j'aimerais quand même envoyer un petit message à mon équipe et lui dire bravo, parce que grâce à leur travail, à notre travail, on a réussi à avoir cette spécialisation. Et aussi, bon, ça c'est une bonne nouvelle, oui, mais qu'est-ce que ça veut dire pour nos clients? Qu'est-ce que cela signifie? Donc, autre que le fait que nos clients font affaire avec des experts dans le domaine, qu'on est validé par Microsoft, mais aussi, le plus important, c'est qu'on est capable d'aller chercher des subventions pour financer des projets, et une bonne partie de projets pour nos clients, pour des projets qui sont admissibles, bien évidemment. Et donc, qu'est-ce qui est derrière ce succès que nous avons? Et là, c'est un bon moment pour vous parler de notre méthodologie de travail, qui nous aide à accompagner nos clients vers une maturité avancée, analytique. Donc, notre méthodologie ITI, nous avons conçu cette méthodologie en 3 étapes, parce que généralement, quand on parle avec nos clients, c'est toujours les mêmes questions qui reviennent. Que ça soit, oui, on a beaucoup d'initiatives data and AI, mais on ne sait pas par où commencer. On passe énormément de temps, chaque département a leur propre stratégie data, mais on n'arrive pas à trouver quelque chose d'unifié. On ne sait pas par où commencer, le point de départ n'est pas clair. Et donc aussi la question du retour sur investissement. Donc généralement on dit oui, ça a l'air intéressant, mais je sais pas, j'aimerais voir quand même un retour sur investissement concret rapidement. Donc en se basant sur ces questions-là, on a conçu cette méthodologie en 3 étapes. La première étape par quoi on commence, c'est un parcours stratégique. Cette étape-là, en fait, ce que ça nous aide à faire, c'est de comprendre, évaluer et planifier. En fait, on passe par une série d'ateliers techniques et commerciaux pour essayer de comprendre les besoins, les objectifs et les défis que nos clients font face. Et à partir de cette compréhension approfondie, on est capable d'identifier un point de départ qui va prendre en considération des cas d'utilisation urgents pour essayer d'assurer un retour sur investissement le plus rapidement possible. Et aussi, dans cette phase, on inclut aussi une partie qui est un projet pilote qui va venir servir comme une preuve de concept pour essayer de valider la solution qu'on propose avant un déploiement complet. Puis après, une fois que nous avons approuvé cette preuve de concept, on est prêt à passer à la deuxième étape qui s'appelle les fondations analytiques. Ici, ce qu'on fait essentiellement, c'est là où nos experts, nos architectes de données, nos ingénieurs de données vont venir construire des pipelines ETL pour extraction, loading et chargement et transformation de données, pour ensuite automatiser les processus, donner des processus de rollback. Tout ça, ça serait bien documenté pour essayer de s'assurer aux clients une autonomie adéquate. Et pour finir, la troisième étape, c'est une fois qu'une base solide est mise en place, on arrive pour le troisième objectif, c'est de mettre en place un environnement BI en libre service. Et ce que ça veut dire, c'est de s'assurer que l'information importante est à la portée de tous et qu'il y a une seule source de vérité et que tout le monde peut aller à la même place pour tirer des rapports, pour poser les bonnes questions. On verra ce que Daniel, mon collègue, va vous parler aujourd'hui du copilot. Ça devient encore de plus en plus accessible pour tout le monde. Mais il faut s'assurer que nous avons les données qui sont bien structurées, bien évidemment, dans une seule place. Et bien évidemment, avec la bonne configuration, les sécurités, on va s'assurer que seulement les bonnes personnes ont accès à la bonne information au bon moment pour prendre des décisions éclairées. Donc, prochain slide, ici, je vais vous parler rapidement des réalisations où on a pu mettre en pratique cette méthodologie à travers différents secteurs. Et malheureusement, parce qu'on n'a pas beaucoup de temps et ce n'est pas vraiment le sujet principal, on ne va pas rentrer trop dans le détail dans chaque cas d'utilisation, mais si dans l'écran, il y a un secteur particulier qui vous interpelle, venez nous voir. Après la présentation, il nous fera plaisir de vous de rentrer un peu plus en profondeur dans chaque secteur ou dans le secteur qui vous interpelle le plus. Mais on compte les assurances et services financiers, télécommunications, agroalimentaire, éducation, santé et bien plus. OK. Et avant de céder la parole à mon collègue Daniel, je voulais partager avec vous quelque chose, une analogie qui m'a marqué quand je lisais un livre récemment. Ce livre, il s'appelle The AI-Powered Enterprise par le célèbre écrivain Seth Hurley. Et avant de vous expliquer l'analogie, je vais quand même vous lire un petit extrait du livre qui quand même explique un peu l'idée générale de ce livre. Le flux de données est le moteur vital de toute organisation moderne. Les systèmes cloisonnés ou séparés ralentissent la libre circulation de l'information et limitent la capacité d'une entreprise à exploiter pleinement la puissance de l'intelligence artificielle. Et donc, pour supporter son argument et son propos, ce qu'il a fait, c'est qu'il a fait référence, il a évoqué le programme Apollo de la NASA dans les années 1960, en disant que c'était un objectif très loin dans le futur, et qu'en fait, c'était la raison derrière plusieurs inventions et d'avancées technologiques. Donc, même si l'objectif était loin, le chemin pour y arriver, c'est ce qui a apporté le plus de valeur. Le simple fait qu'une personne a marché sur la Lune n'a pas nécessairement apporté beaucoup de valeur. Mais en fait, c'est le chemin parcouru qui a apporté de la valeur à l'humanité. Et donc, d'une façon similaire, si on considère que l'objectif pour se rendre à une maîtrise adéquate de l'intelligence artificielle comme un plan ambitieux qui s'étend loin dans le futur, et ben, si on planifie ça bien, c'est la plus grande valeur qu'on va récolter, c'est les plusieurs récompenses qu'on va récolter en chemin, dans le parcours qu'on va parcourir. Et je pense que le message que j'ai envie de vous laisser avec, c'est que la véritable valeur réside souvent dans le parcours ou le voyage pour atteindre la destination. Merci de m'avoir écouté. Je vais passer Daniel pour la prochaine partie.
Can everyone hear me? All right. Je m'excuse, je ne vais pas faire la présentation en français, mais on a des anglophones ici, so hopefully everybody understands me, doesn't need a translator, doesn't seem like it, everyone's been understanding bilingualism perfectly today. So, generative AI. I sigh at the start of this because we've been hearing AI all day. It's probably happening right next to us. It's AI everywhere. Hopefully, I'll be able to bring the conversation down to a practical level. I'll be able to bring the more precise applications within an organization and prove to the point why analytics, and that being the centralization of your data, organization of your data, securization of your data, and that being any organizational data from any application, is the backbone to making the most out of this era of AI. That being said, I'm going to kind of go back and forth on certain subjects, and hopefully it comes all together. So the bridge between BI, business intelligence, and AI. The claim that we made last year, the talk, was very much about analytical maturity. Now, I just want to make sure everybody understands what that means. Analytical maturity is a journey. There is another axis, not that I'm showing it here, because I forgot to. It's just not there, so I'll explain it. The more mature you become with respect to analytics, the more business value you're going to obtain. This has been something that's been said for many years, so I'm not going to bore you too much with that spiel. However, what we said, let's say if we want to say what was yesterday. Yesterday was low analytical maturity. If you see these applications, Salesforce, SAP, this is an example of an organization. You have stakeholders, as shown by the icons there. Those could be stakeholders, lines of business, functions, whatever you want to call it. They're going to several different applications to accumulate their data, to make the decision that they want to make. They're probably copy-pasting it and putting it into Excel. Maybe somebody's figured out Power BI and they're connecting it to just one of those sources. I'm sure that there are individuals, probably a lot of individuals, that have either lived this in the past or are living this today. That is low analytical maturity. So the argument we made last year was we want to improve this with an analytical architecture, an analytics solution to ingest all of this data automatically, clean it up automatically, centralize it into one place, and organize it in a way that it's easy to perform basic analytics and advanced analytics. What you can see here is that those stakeholders that used to be are now all consuming from the same place. Here it's Power BI, an example of an advanced reporting tool. All the data from SAP down to any SQL database is centralized in the center. Now, some other things that are now possible that weren't possible before is to share that data externally, or even more interestingly, to monetize the data, whatever it is. For example, a telecom company or a marketing company, they would like to make money off of the data that they've created. It's an asset. And then on the bottom, data science. So that is me saying that any example of an advanced use case that an organization wants to do, the argument here is that you wouldn't be able to do that on the left side because things are just too disorganized to make it happen. So that's the today. However, that's the spiel that I gave last year. I want to talk about where we're going tomorrow. Now, the symbols that we're seeing here are Copilot and Microsoft Fabric. I won't get to them just yet, but it's alluding to what we're going to talk about. Now, this is a slide that hopefully won't bore everybody. It probably could bore you. However, I've been hearing the term AI being thrown everywhere, and I just want to make sure everyone knows that AI doesn't just mean ChatGPT. I'm responsible for making sure that an organization explores all the ways that they can use AI to create business value, and these are the different AIs that you could apply. I'm just going to breeze through them. Predictive AI is anything like sales financial forecasting. Discriminative AI is the classification. So let's say a transaction, is it fraud, is it not fraud? Descriptive AI is actually your reporting, so creating advanced reporting to allow you to get some insights. Prescriptive AI is price optimization, or let's say your basket optimization if you're on Amazon and whatnot. Reinforcement learning, self-driving cars. Computer vision is image recognition, you could call it. And then, of course, generative AI. So that's what I will be talking about most today. But I did want to make sure that everybody keeps this in mind because it is something that you should always be asking yourself, how could I make value of whatever data points I have with respect to these things? Hopefully I'm not going too fast. All right, so back to bridging the gap. I'm going to give you guys 3 statistics. It's kind of funny to prove why generative AI is so important, although the fact that every single keynote session today talks about it already proves the point. I'll just give some statistics. So 98% of global executives say that AI, large language models, LLMs, are going to play an important role in organization strategies. 98%. That says enough. Now, 40% of all working hours can be impacted by large language models. I find that quite drastic. And then the market for AI in general is going to grow 37%. Now, I'm not going to talk too much more about that, just to prove the point that there's a reason why we're talking about it and why everyone else is talking about it. So I did say I want to make it a little bit practical. And the reason why I want to make it practical is so that I can bring home the point as to why the collection and organization of your data is the backbone to using this technology. For me to bring that point home, I have to explain how to use the technology. Maybe everybody here already knows it. Hopefully that's not the case, so that we're not wasting everyone's time. The first way, there's 2 ways that one can use generative AI, is the consumption method. Now this is the first method, the easiest method to try and maximize the value when working with generative AI. And that is, for example, if I go to ChatGPT and I ask it a question, it is a pre-trained model. I didn't touch the model. It is a foundational model. I ask it a question. It answers. Now, if we want to go a step beyond, I might engineer that question or prompt that I would like to ask so that it gives me more specifically what I'm looking for. Prompt engineering, consumption, foundational model. The other option is to customize the model itself. So you say, okay, I've tried to engineer my prompt as much as possible. It's not giving me what I want, so now I'm going to try and tune the model so that it gives me what I want. That means giving it data, training it above and beyond what it already is. Much, much, much more advanced, requires a completely different process of development, different resources. So what I want to do is make sure that we focus on the first step. I don't want to get too confused. There's plenty to be explored in the consumption. So that means prompt engineering everywhere. This is what that looks like. Again, sorry for those who already know what all this stuff is. I hopefully will bring those points back to data, and whether that data is in your SAP or your Salesforce or anything. So in this example, we're asking a large language model, as you can see on the right, rate the sentiment of the following sentence as positive, neutral, or negative. That sentence we then give, so that's the instruction. Then the context is an example here. So we're saying this is an example of a correct answer, where when the sentence was, my coffee machine stops working after 1 month, the answer should be negative. So it goes, okay, you've now told me, you've given me some context. And then here we give the user input, which I want to call the data point. So this would come from some ERP system or something that has that information related to a product's reviews, and it's now bringing that into the prompt. And that is the comment. I can say this is the best coffee machine I've ever had. And the output, the response on the bottom, positive. The two things I want to highlight here, so that's prompt engineering. The two things I want to highlight here are context and user input. Context is everything. Garbage in, garbage out. If you can give high quality context to a large language model, it will give you the output that you want. The reason why I say context is important, because a lot of the arguments that have been made today, for example, Copilot being connected to your Microsoft 365 or your security environment, it knows the context. When you ask it a question, it's not just this isolated ChatGPT that you have to write it an essay as to what's happened yesterday for it to know what you're looking for. It always knows. It's always tuned in. It knows the context. I just want to keep that in mind. I may have said that too early, but I'll bring it back. And then the user input is going to be any data point that you have. For example, here, a customer review. All right, hopefully that was enough. Now, I'll talk about 4 ways that we use AI, and that's a loose term. Hopefully it makes sense. AI helps us with advising, and so that is me going to ChatGPT or a large language model and asking, can you tell me the how-tos on this problem? It is advising me. I come with a question, it helps me answer it. Yes, it's generating content, but let's call it advisory. The next is coding, which is a subset of advising, but I do want to create it as its own thing because I'm sure here in technology, we know the world of coding is completely different to the many other more natural language tasks that one might have for advisory. So using ChatGPT to help you code and develop, then creating as a whole, write me an essay, write a marketing email for my campaign, or even image generation, the whole task of the creation, and then finally automating, since this can all be coded. Now, advising, coding, creating, automating, I'm going to bring these into my next piece. Those are, generally speaking, the ways that one uses AI to create some sort of value in whatever use case it is. So, analytics in this era of AI, now that we have a little bit of a primer as to the term AI, the other AIs, how generative AI works, and the 4 ways that we are generally interacting with AI, and the fact that we're focusing on consumption here. So bringing it back to this, today, right now, next, I will be talking about Copilot and Microsoft Fabric. Now, before I jump in, for a show of hands, who knows with some level of accuracy what Microsoft Fabric is? Two, 3, 4, 5 people? Even someone who I know knows it's not even putting up his hand. Thank you. All right. So we know what Copilot is. I don't need to ask that question. So what would the combined world of these two things be? Now, before I jump in, what is Microsoft Fabric? I should answer that. Microsoft Fabric is a SaaS platform, the newest generation of an analytics solution or analytics platform provided by Microsoft. What used to be Azure Data Factory as a sole resource for the ingestion and orchestration of your data. What used to be a data lake as a separate, and Synapse or a database as a separate resource are now one, as well as Purview, as well as Power BI, as well as Data Activator. Everything that you would need to perform your analytics duties are on one SaaS application. Now let's bring in the idea of Copilot in there and just wrap this all into the topic of bridging BI and AI. Data factory. Now I'm just going to give some examples here. By the way, these are screenshots from Microsoft's Ignite presentation, so credit to them, not to me. And additionally, the reason I say that is because Microsoft Fabric is now generally available. Less than 1 month it's been, so this is all really new in a good way. It's been in public preview for a while, but everything that you should be hearing about this, the buzz around it is legitimate. It's now, a conversation that we can have more seriously about implementing this in production. So back to this. As you can see, advising and coding, that's what Copilot would be doing in Data Factory. What is Data Factory? Just to make sure everybody understands, that's the ingestion of data, the transformation and preparation of data. So let's say you're an organization that has been copy-pasting, from an Excel file to another, or pulling an Excel file from your Salesforce, or maybe you've got a Power BI connected to one of the sources. Ideally, you'd like to use one tool to pull the data from all the places into one centralized location and perform some transformations. So that's what Data Factory should be doing. And with Copilot, as an example of a, let's say, advisory coding capacity, you can use natural language to go through those steps. Now, I wish I had a demo where I could play a video and it'll appease everybody easily, but I'll just talk to this example here, where not only is the individual asking layman's natural language prompts to create the code without any interaction. The middle column of that data set on the bottom are product reviews. And so the individual has said, can you please bring the orders table in, perform some transformations, but also can you use OpenAI to take all of those customer reviews and create a sentiment, a new column. Now, the reason why I want to take a little time to just explain this scenario is because it is quite powerful when you start to think any table in any application, anywhere in your organization, you can bring in using the same tool. You can use natural language to perform the transformations. You can ask it to use your OpenAI, ChatGPT, however you'd like to call it, to perform tasks on every single cell, every single row within any table. It's quite powerful, and it is the only example that I've been able to find so far where a solution is able to, let's say, apply the world of AI, generative AI, to any of the data sources that a company might be dealing with. As we've seen today, this application has an AI bot just for that application. This application has an AI bot just for this application. But if you are able to centralize all of your data into one place, you can use an AI bot for your Salesforce, to your SAP, to your Google Analytics, you name it. It does require a little bit of work to centralize it, to get it together, but you can see where I'm going with it, hopefully. After Data Factory, other things, data science, data engineering, can be powered by Copilot in a similar sense, advisory and coding, and not to exactly say the same things as I said before, but let's say data science was too advanced before. Now, the barrier of exploring data science not only has been eased because you've centralized it, et cetera, but from a Copilot perspective, me being someone who's explored in depth the world of data science can admit that it is extremely helpful to have that resource to my side. So in case that is a barrier, it's now been lowered. Power BI, while I call this a nice to have, some people maybe will find a lot of value in turning natural language prompts into visualizations. I haven't explored it too much, but I'll just leave it there and I'll move on, but it is something that is part of this whole suite. Now, this piece here is, I find a little bit more interesting, where we're now starting to see the creating and automating components. So again, custom LLM engineering, advising, coding, creating, and automating. This is essentially what I showed before, but in code form. So if you do want to create custom prompts, and without getting into depths, having linkages between each of the prompts, which means having historical context from one prompt to the next, and then put in your customer reviews or your product dimensions or whatever it may be, any data point that you have centralized in your Fabric environment, you can be feeding into your custom engineered prompts. So hopefully as a business in any industry of any size, you realize you're just one platform away, as well as strategy and some effort to exploring generative AI on top of any data set that you have within your organization. So hopefully this is coming together like I was wishing it did. And then what I found interesting as well at the end of the Ignite presentation was this, to come, this Roadmap 2024 component where what you're seeing here is a Teams chat where you are chatting with your Copilot and you ask it the question, what were my sales last quarter? And so you are essentially chatting with your Copilot that knows all the context of the data that's been stored in your OneLake, in your centralized repository of information, and is able to answer that. And this comes back to context. Because Copilot has the context of all of your data sources, schemas, the columns, it understands it all, it's scanned it all. It's kind of like your AI data analyst, kind of making my job obsolete, but it's coming. So, in conclusion, if we were to go a few steps back, and I've made the argument of analytical maturity, generally speaking, why go along this journey? It does come back to Omar's point, which was said in French, so I'll just say it one time in English, about the moonshot, the Apollo mission, getting to the moon. It was the several inventions and iterations of hard work to get there that created more value than actually just getting there. So maybe one day you will have your custom prompt engineered large language model doing something for some specific use case, but the journey of centralizing all of your data, getting good analytics on it, all of that will be of way more value than just the one use case. So back to this. Increasing your insights and business value. Increasing productivity and reducing waste. Increasing collaboration and knowledge sharing. Increasing data quality and management. Your 4 general reasons why you should be increasing your analytical maturity. So if we look at this diagram, which I should have showed earlier, encompassing everything that is Microsoft Fabric, your data factory, which is the ingestion and orchestration, data engineering for advanced transformations, the data science component, the data warehousing, the real-time analytics, Power BI for reporting, and data activator for alerting and notifications on whatever that may be. It's all AI assisted, can all have shared workspaces, a single compute, one security layer, all stored together with single sign-ons for everything. I mentioned this, barriers. So having a Copilot to the side, some might see it as a nice to have. I can understand that. It's not that special, you might say. However, depending on your organization, it will drastically lower the barriers that were needed for an individual to explore maybe a transformation step. Maybe the task of going from product reviews to sentiment would have taken some expert to pull it off. Now you can just chat with Copilot and pull it off. You've lowered that barrier. Same thing for all the other aspects. Or for those who are, let's say, capable of performing that sentiment task, just as an example. They're capable, but now you've reduced the time. So individuals' productivity has gone up, as well as lowering the barrier. As I mentioned, it's a SaaS platform. I've had experience exploring with customers what it would look like to be in a modular environment where you have your data factory resource here, you have your networking here, you have your data lake here, your database or Synapse here. Now they can have it all as one SaaS platform. Speaking with customers, I'm sure you can see how that might be sold yourself. Much, much easier to implement and much less maintenance to take care of. And this is just an example of the lowest SKU. And I put that there just to kind of plant a seed, and maybe someone will try it out with the low cost. Of course, I can't promise that that'll be sufficient, but hopefully that will inspire some of you to explore it. So that being said, I'll finish off this last slide. We've engineered some services with our partners, that being Microsoft, to get you ready to go along this journey. And that being AI-ready strategy. So any analytics objective needs to start with a business question, business objectives, business understanding, etc. So we call that strategy. Design and strategy workshops to define what that is, where you're trying to go, why does that have value, have it be business focused, and in terms of delivering something, it's a roadmap that says this is phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, etc., in case you didn't know what steps you needed to take to get there. And then finally, we would also help you with the deployment of these tools and getting you to a certain level of applicability with respect to getting the data into the environment, transforming it so that you can start to use it, and let you explore the rest from there. So let us collaborate with you, our teams, and our partners for your analytics journey in this era of AI. That is the presentation. Thank you very much, and hopefully we were able to bridge the gap between all the data sources that you have in an organization, what the hell is generative AI, and where do those two things come together without it being a feature of an application you paid for, but something that you are more strategic about in your future. So thank you very much.
Good job, man.
And if there are any questions, we do make time for ourselves. So are there any just yet? If not, you can meet us afterwards. Thank you.